The NS Class 1100. This one excites me because this is the first time we've been able to talk about a locomotive from the Netherlands. Although they were actually constructed by Alstom, which is a French company, they were built for the... oh boy. Nederlandse Spoorwegen? Yes? No, I butchered that horribly. I'm sorry, I gave it a shot. Listen, they're electric locomotives operating off of pantograph lines, and technically speaking, they ran. I mean, on the technical level, they were fine in terms of their pulling abilities, maintenance levels, and their reliability. No, that wasn't really the problem with these. The real problem was that the drivers that worked for Nederlandse Spoorwegen just hated these locomotives so much. And that's because of a few unusual traits these locomotives had. The main one being that their buffers were actually attached to the bogies, not the main body. Normally buffers are used as a stopgap between cars or locomotives, and they're designed to absorb some level of impact and to stabilize things in between the rolling stock. But because the 1100's buffers were attached to the bogies, it meant they never really could be stable at all. As a result, the riding quality on the 1100's was just atrocious. They shook horribly, basically non-stop. Additionally, the cabs were actually designed for the comfort of French drivers in 1950, which is when these locomotives were introduced. Now, the issue is that the average height of the Netherlands at the time was taller than the average height of French drivers, apparently. Because anyone taller than about 5'7", or 1.7 meters, had a really hard time in the non-adjustable driver's seat. Also, the air drafted around the driver's lower legs, making an already uncomfortable ride that much worse. And if that all wasn't bad enough, the cooling fans for the engine compartment were actually incredibly loud, so they were uncomfortable and noisy. They lasted a remarkably long time despite that, because, like I said, technically speaking, in terms of moving, they were fine, but they were so bad that until 1980, their drivers were actually paid a special bonus that's usually designated for dirty or unpleasant work. Yes, really. The Nederlandse Spoorwegen literally paid their train drivers more just to work on this specific class of locomotives, because apparently they were that bad. Currently, there are 5 of these locomotives still in preservation. And I do put them low on the list because, like I said, technically they ran well. They just made their drivers' jobs a living nightmare. That kind of puts them on the list just because of that. I've never heard of another locomotive needing a financial incentive in order to get people to actually use it, you know? The Chorus Oimper Erand... oh god. The CC1. We're gonna go with that. The CC1, which was designed for the CIE? It's got a little thing over it normally. I do not know how to say that. They're responsible for the trains in Ireland. They're Ireland's British Rail. We'll go with that. But the CC1 was actually developed by Oliver Bulleid, who's come up before on these lists. He was a bit of an eccentric person when it came to locomotive design, and he made some of the best locomotives, and he also made some of the worst, because he could never be average, which is kind of a thing that happened. And the CC1 may look a little familiar to you, and that is because it was developed right after his ill-fated leader class, which, as you recall, appeared on my very first list of worst trains ever. And the CC1 is sometimes considered worse, but actually looking at it, it's honestly not as bad, as the CC1 had many improvements put into it that the leader never got a chance to have. As a result, it tended to have less problems overall, but it still wasn't very good. And that's because the CC1 was also known as the turf burner, because it was designed to not use coal as fuel, but turf, which is an Irish term for peat. Peat is an accumulation of partially decayed vegetation or organic matter, and it's basically coal before it's actually coal, or other fossil fuels for that matter. It takes a long time for fossil fuels to form, but peat is a very early step in that process, and it can be used as fuel like coal is, but it's not quite as efficient. There were many experiments before this one to make peat-burning locomotives, because peat is readily available in Ireland. They actually have the biggest concentration of it over there. But none of these designs really ever worked very well or for that long, just because of the nature of the fuel itself. The CC1 was meant to be the perfected version of a turf burner, but ultimately it had too many problems to be worth it. Its water consumption was very high, and its boiler's double-ended nature and sectional construction gave rise to just a lot of operational difficulties. Its reversing gear was also a pain in the butt, never operating correctly at any point during its development. Additionally, at its number 2 end, the driver and fireman were actually on the same side of the locomotive. This is weird because on a traditional steam locomotive, they would be on 2 different sides of the cab and therefore able to spot signals more easily. But this way it raised concerns that a signal could possibly be missed, and that's always dangerous. The CC1 did make a few trips hauling transfer freight trains in the Dublin area, but Bullitt himself would retire in May of 1958. As soon as he was gone, the Railway Board abandoned the CC1 project, finally withdrawing it in 1963, and it was scrapped in 1965. The EMD SD50. This is an odd one for me because this is a hood unit, and generally speaking, hood units are usually pretty good. And to be honest, looking at hood units, it's actually really hard to tell them apart sometimes. Looking at the SD50, you might mistake these for SD40s or 40-2s, and 40-2s are great. Phenomenal, actually appearing on my top 5 best locomotives. So what's wrong with the SD50? Well, they were meant to be an evolution of the SD40s, as the name might imply, except that they weren't at all. They were supposed to compete with General Electric's Dash 7 line, because the Dash 7s are great and we're starting to take some of the EMD's business. But the SD50 was just not the way to go. They weren't the first successors of the SD40s. The SD45 and 45-2s actually came before, but they didn't sell well, not because there were any real fault with them, but because they used enormous 20-cylinder engines with high fuel consumption, and they came into being during the 1970s fuel crisis, so it was really bad timing for them. The SD50s shrunk down the horsepower a little bit, and actually just used an updated of the V16645 diesel engine used in the SD40-2s, but they uprated it to 3,500 horsepower and later to 3,600 horsepower. The problem was that those engines were not actually designed to do that, and whatever modifications they gave it weren't enough. The 50s were plagued with constant engine and electrical failures. As a result, they were incredibly unpopular and really tarnished EMD's reputation at the time. Only 431 were produced for sale, which is a pittance compared to the over 4,000 SD40-2s they created. The SD50s were not long for the world, and eventually the SD60s were released, and they were much more successful. Though it is worth noting that many of the SD50s that were built are still in service, as their technical problems could be fixed and drivers knew not to overstress the engines. British Rail Class 48. One day, I'm going to make one of these lists and not have to stare at your stupid logo. One day. Today is not that day. Today you have made sure to make me miserable once again. 13 times. 13 lists. And here you are. Here you stand. Unashamed. And you know what you should be? This is embarrassing. Not for me, but for you. The Class 48 was a diesel locomotive class. It only consisted of 5 examples, and it was built and delivered between 1965 and 1966. Now, the 48s may look a little familiar to some people because I'm sure some of you are going to get them mixed up with the Class 47s. However, understand that while they look very, very, very similar, the 48s were an experiment, and they differed from the 47s because they were fitted with Sulzer V12 12 LVA24 power units, which produced 2,650 bhp, or about 1,976 kilowatts. The Class 47s had a standard 12 LDA28C twin bank 12-cylinder unit. They were testing efficiency and power output here, just to see how the different engines might work out. And the answer is, well, they didn't. They were terrible. The 12 LVA24 engines just didn't work. They were unreliable, and the locomotives spent more time out of service than their standard Class 47 counterparts. Engine failures happened all the time, and the repairs for such engines were actually incredibly expensive. All this sounds very familiar because it's something we've talked about with pretty much every single diesel class produced during the 1960s for British Rail. This keeps happening, and just for reference, these ones were made by Brush Traction as well as Falcon Works. But to be fair, this was an experiment, so I get that. And the locomotives stayed in service for quite a long time, the last one not being withdrawn until 2002. And one of them is even in preservation. However, none of this is relevant to the Class 48 because by the time all of that occurred, oh, they were Class 47s. Yeah, see, because the initial engines of the Class 48 were so awful, they had actually been converted into Class 47s in 1971. So their longevity and preservation has nothing to do with them being Class 48s. As Class 48s, they were awful. It's just that they were converted into a different class entirely, and that's the reason why they survived, and why one of them, D1705, is still in preservation. And, okay, I'll take it. That's fine. At least they found a new lease on life and got new engines. It's kind of like when Henry got rebuilt into a Black 5. Le Eagle, or the Eagle, is... It's a locomotive, wow, where do I even begin? It was number 261, and it was designed for the l'Ouest Railway in France. In 1855, it appeared at the International Exhibition in Paris, and as you may have noticed by now, it had the largest wheels ever fitted to a French locomotive at 9 feet 4 inches. That's actually just short of the world record for wheels on a locomotive, and that's allegedly held by the Hurricane, which was built for the Great Western Railroad in 1838. Maybe I'll talk about that some other time. Now, the thing about the Eagle over here is that it's, well, this is not a good design at all, for just many, many reasons. The big wheels don't actually add anything to the overall tractive effort generally. I mean, sometimes they can, but the wheels have to be upsized within the same ratio as the rest of the locomotive, and quite obviously, they were not. Because the wheels were so big, the axles were too high for a normal boiler to be placed between the frame members. So they used a boiler that was kind of divided in two, and the driving axles passed between them. That sounds really weird, because it was, and no, it was not very efficient at all. Maintenance was a nightmare on these things, and there's no record of it actually being used in revenue service because of its bizarre design. I mean, yeah, it gets your attention because of those ginormous wheels, but it didn't actually add anything. There were some dubious claims that this locomotive was incredibly fast, or apparently having pulled a 100-ton load up a 1/100th incline. Apparently designers back then even claimed it can go 100 miles an hour, which would have been insane in 1855, but there's no evidence of this being factual at all. It was probably just propaganda to make people more interested in the bizarre take on locomotive technology we had going on here. Like I said, it was basically never used. It's unknown what happened to it. Given it's not really around anymore and information's hard to come by, it was likely scrapped not long after the exhibition in Paris where it was shown off. What a way to go. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.